OK, let's kick off our news review. Charlie and Millie are here. We're going to delve into the front page of the Daily Mail, Charlie. And this is news of a book by Virginia Giuffre, who died in April. And it was her wish, her dying wish, that the book, the memoir that she had written with a journalist, would be published. And the Mail going with Andrew facing bombshell new Epstein book. So the palace worried about possible new revelations from this book.
Yeah, absolutely, you'd imagine so. And the book entitled Nobody's Girl, written by, as you say, Virginia Giuffre, who had made allegations against Prince Andrew of sex abuse, meeting her when she was 17 through Jeffrey Epstein. So, again, another name that keeps popping up in relation to Donald Trump. So, but, as you say, she took her own life earlier this year in April on her farm in Australia. But her wishes are to have this memoir published, to set the record straight after what was an out-of-court settlement. Prince Andrew has always denied those allegations, it's important to say. We'll just have to wait and see whether this book actually does reach publication. It's clearly been written and it's clearly ready to go. But the allegations are said to be very damning. It is the expose, but it's obviously her view. The very difficult and sad thing is that it's written down. But where there'll be lawyers involved, I'm sure when it comes to publishing the book, will she be able to stand them up? Obviously she can't because she's no longer with us. So it's a tragic case, a tragic life that she seems to have had. But as I say, Prince Andrew's always denied the allegations, and who knows what the palace or how the palace will respond if and when this book is published.
Yeah, absolutely. The backdrop is, of course, Ghislaine Maxwell talking to investigators, and those transcripts released over the weekend, essentially, and Virginia Giuffre's family coming out and saying that they're really distraught and upset that Ghislaine Maxwell is potentially rewriting history in comments that she's made since. So a really interesting case. More details on that, I'm sure, to come. We're going to move on to the Eye now, Millie. A big story for us across the weekend here on Sky News and this morning. And it's all about details of fast-tracking asylum hearings and the process that people go through to try to stay in this country, and the appeals then when if it's rejected. The big problem for Yvette Cooper will be timing.
Yeah.
Because all these new plans that are expected to come in, that there'll be adjudicators, not judges, and setting up that team will be a headache in itself.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of this sort of plan is to speed up the process and make sure we've got fewer asylum seekers housed in hotels in the UK, which is what an awful lot of this anger has been about recently. But the problem that's outlined in the Eye is that while it will be sort of in place within weeks, it might take months to become operational. And I think that issue of pace and sort of sluggishness when it comes to taking action is really what a lot of people, and actually a lot of MPs as well, are angry about. They feel like the government hasn't moved quick enough. We're a year into office, it's still a problem. The number of people crossing the channel is growing still. I think the fact that it's taking a few months now really does sum up this anger that people feel. The government's not taking it seriously enough in their eyes. Obviously, ministers would say they're introducing an awful lot of policies, like the one in, one out scheme with France, and yet this new system of asylum appeals operating. But actually, it really shows they're just not really moving quick enough, I think. And a lot of people are feeling that. We had some polling we read earlier, I think, in the Times, saying that 7 in 10 feel like the government has mishandled it. So it feels like it's slightly out of step with public feeling on this.
And Charlie, of course, over the weekend, hundreds of hotels were the focal point across the country for protests because, as Millie said, people are feeling angry. This is a government a year in, but prior to that was the Conservatives who also mishandled the crisis.
No, I think that's absolutely right, and I think we're only going to see, I think, more of these protests as more councils on the back of Epping sort of challenged the government's ruling of housing migrants in local hotels. And it is, as we talked about, it's a #1 issue that clearly lots of people care about. And I think what the government's got to do, on the back of, as I said, complete Tory failure, that's why they got an absolute trouncing at the last election, they've got to get on top of the issue, not just stopping the boats, but getting through the processing. That doesn't mean just, allowing people to come in. It means deporting people that shouldn't be here. It means closing the hotels. It means just sending a message that if you take a small boat crossing or if you come into the country illegally, you won't be able to have a claim made in this country. I mean, I think, well, in the run-up to party conference season, which is only a couple of weeks away, these are going to be, I think, issues that, will come up. There'll be, division within both the Labour Party and the Tory Party, and reform about how you can deal with it, whether it's tough enough or whether it isn't tough at all. So there'll be lots of conversations. Still, this conversation will be going on for the weeks and months ahead. But what the government's got to do is just really demonstrate through a whole package of measures that it's serious about getting on top of the issue. And, it's about showing the public what it can do and not just telling the public what it's going to do.
Yeah, and this leads to the front page of The Guardian. And this is a story about MPs reporting a sharp rise in online abuse, all linked to how their stance, I suppose, on the debate around immigration and the Green Party co-leader, Clara Denyer, talking about the type of abuse that she's received, which was quite... She said in her own words she's not surprised by the type of abuse that she's receiving. And we know, MPs have panic buttons in their offices. And it's incidents like this that lead to a worrying rise in abuse for MPs, which they're serving public office. They don't really deserve this type of abuse.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And, some MPs have police officers that have to go to their surgeries to make sure that everything is OK, just as a sort of symbol of maintaining a bit of order and security. But I'm not necessarily sure I agree that there's been an increase in online abuse. Frankly, I think it's been there for a long time. It might be because there's been quite a turnover of MPs, certainly a number of new MPs that have come in. They're happy to report it. But certainly, all through, the Brexit divisions, MPs were receiving a barrage of abuse and hate mail. And we're seeing a rise of attacks against MPs. We've seen, terrible incidents in Southend and obviously within Parliament itself in the case of, PC Palmer, Keith Palmer, killed. So, there's a security issue that constantly sort of rears its head and makes the papers. But, the idea that, as you say, people that put themselves forward to serve in public life, whatever their politics, the overwhelming majority of people, certainly in my experience, are there for the right reasons to try and do a good job. But this is just another reason why so many people don't want to go into politics. And, good people don't put their head above the parapet because of the abuse, whether it's online, whether it's verbal, whether it's physical, and all the threats that they face. So, they've got a tough job to do. They've got a lot of work to do throughout the stories that we're talking about today.
I was just speaking to someone about how, this is the summer recess, but there's been so many big hot potato issues that politicians have had to deal with. And of course, when they go off on recess, they don't just go and sit on a deck chair somewhere on a coast. They're working still. But it's a huge issue that I think, really needs to get a handle on. We're going to move on to, this is a really interesting story now. It's page 5. It's in the Daily Mail. Mansplaining. And it's just how men talk to each other. Is that true? Charlie?
Well,
explain to us, mansplain.
I could speak with authority on that. Yes, well, let me explain to you both just what it actually is. It's comedian David Mitchell sort of trying to defend this idea of mansplaining, where somebody, typically a man, tries to explain to typically a woman just, how things are, or over-explains and oversimplifies things. It's
just so you're aware.
Exactly, just to make you aware. But he's defending it, saying it's actually just a way that men talk to other men, and it's, they do over-explain things, they do lecture other men, because they don't actually talk about things that they should be talking about, which is either emotions or feelings. So they skirt around maybe doing things that men should be able to talk about, but traditionally felt maybe they're not able to express themselves in a particular way. So they go
I'm
the
going
long
to
way.
cut you off, and I'm going to mansplain. This show has come to an end. Join us after the break. I love you really, Charlie.
Thank you.
Thanks for your company.
Fire, shouts the commander.